So lads, you've probably been in that position before, right? Where you've started a cut, you've got down to maybe 15% body fat, but you can never really break that barrier. And every time you cut, you just end up back at 15% body fat. And you never really get shredded, which is the whole point. You only want to be 15% body fat when you're 20, right? You only want to be in decent shape when you're out of shape. But once you get there, you want to be in fucking phenomenal shape. And that's why it's so frustrating when you end up hitting that sticking point every single time. You just return back to 15% body fat. Food probably can't go any lower. Expenditure probably can't go up much higher, or it may seem that way, right? Where it almost feels like you're eating nothing, you're starving yourself, but you're doing that much cardio that if you did any more, you would be fucked. Training sessions feeling shit, just feeling lethargic through the day, like surviving on stimulants and caffeine, and then you've got that weird crackhead, like wiry feeling at work and shit, and you know, it's a tough place to be, and it makes finishing the job almost impossible, which is, you know, probably the position you're in. Now, one thing that you've got to understand here, the laws of thermodynamics do not change at the position that you've been at, meaning whatever's been working up until that point where you hit the ceiling is the same shit that's gonna work to get you to 10%. So why does it not work? The principle is the same. Calorie deficit, guys. You fucking, you know, I'm not making videos on what a calorie deficit is. You guys already know that. You've already had some success with it. You know it works. But why does that principle stop working? Well, the principle is probably being applied incorrectly. At all times, speeding. At all times, guys, you've got two things running simultaneously, right? Regardless of what's happening with food or training or whatever you're doing, there's almost two plans. There's two strategies. The strategy that you're following and the man following the strategy. Those are two different things. They require strategy themselves. You have the strategy, you have the calorie deficit, you have the mechanism of training and nutrition and expenditure, but then you have the man following it, and people do not place enough weight on this. You need a strategy for yourself. You need systems. You need things in place that are going to stop you going off course. And people message me all the time, people that follow my Instagram, and they see what I do day in, day out with relentless consistency. And they often like shoot me a message and like, Mr. Consistent, or how do you do this while you're running a business? Getting up at 4:30 every single morning, doing everything that I do. It's systems. Like, I'm not born any more gifted than any of you guys are with discipline. I used to be getting up at like 10 a.m. in uni. And yes, it takes some willpower to get up that early, but it's a systems thing, right? You can't willpower your way to being shredded. You can't willpower your way to being financially free or any of these other aspirations that you have in life. You have to have systems in place, not only for the training and all of that side and the fitness side, but systems for you. For you to be able to analyze what's going wrong, track all your data, track your inputs, track and measure the outputs, and reflect and look at them and go, right, am I getting the intended result here? The reason why this is so relevant, guys, is because you know it isn't working at a certain point. And you know what most people do? They change nothing. They just keep doing the same shit, the same inputs. They don't probably collect enough data. They don't really track their weight meticulously. They're not tracking lifts. They're not tracking macros. This is all data, guys. You've got to understand. They're not tracking anything subjective, how they feel, energy, mood. And so for you to be able to pinpoint what's going wrong and what do you actually need to change to elicit more fat loss, you don't even know where to begin. It's impossible for you to get any more body fat off than that last little bit of lower belly fat. because you don't even know where you're at, right? People say, yeah, I'm trying to get lean. All right, bro, what level of lean are we talking here? Well, just, lean. Okay, where are you at right now? Well, I'm about 83 kg. Okay. Where are your calories? I only track protein. Come on, brother. What do you expect? What about your cardio? What's your expenditure like? Well, I just try and hit 10,000 steps every day. Right? How often are you doing that? Most days I do it. Most days isn't good enough. This is why you're in this position. You have to be meticulous with this. Now you can go from 20, even 25, 30% body fat down to like around that 15% mark, not having a clue what to actually do. Just consciously trying to eat a little bit less and move a little bit more. And you can genuinely see a lot of success doing that. I did that in my first couple of years, but I never really got the true result that I wanted. I never got absolutely peeled. I never had the abs pop in from top to bottom. I just had these kind of like faint lines in the middle and across the top two abs, but I never really had the full intercostal showing everything, just looking like an absolute fucking demon, which I wanted that, but I could never get it. And it was that, really. It was moving from just kind of loosely saying, yeah, I want to get in shape, to being very clinical and saying, right, I want to get fucking shredded. Being precise with the inputs, not, I'm training 3 days a week and I rotate, push, pull legs and I just change the exercises every day. No, what are the fucking exercises? What are the rep range? How many sets? And track your lifts every single day. The same with nutrition. The exact same with nutrition, the macros, right? No extra snacks, no extra cooking oils, no extra sauces. All of this stuff adds up and it compounds over time, and that's kind of the issue. You're allowing these like minor little slips. 10k steps, I did 9,500 on Thursday. Well, what are you going to do about that? Why did that happen? Was it laziness? Was it organization? Was it time? What was the thing that caused the slight drop in standards? And more importantly, what are you going to do differently tomorrow? This is why you need the data, first of all, right? Which is the strategy on the fitness side. As part of your overall strategy has to be collecting this data. But then on the man following the strategy side, what are you going to do about it? What time are you making in the day and in the week to go back and look at that data and assess it and look at the trend, look at how scale weight's changed, compare that to last week and say, right, do you know what? This isn't fucking working anymore. I'm not losing any weight. Well, it would be idiotic of me to continue doing the same fucking thing when I know it isn't working. So what are you going to do differently? If you didn't hit your macros, if you snacked, if you binged out, if you fucked up in any way, at the end of that day, you need to come up with an answer as to why that happened and what you're going to try and do differently tomorrow. That's the game. That's it. People think I'm like this perfect athlete, let's say. I don't really class myself as an athlete, but in this example, let's just say athlete, right? People think I'm a perfect athlete. That's why in the last 6 weeks, I've dropped 5.7 kilos. I haven't been perfect. I haven't nailed my macros on every single day in the last 6 weeks. But on the days when it didn't happen, I said, why did that happen? Some of those days, maybe I had a snack, right? Maybe I went over on my calories. Now that's not the end of the world, guys, but this is the problem. That's why it creeps up as an issue, because it's not the end of the world, so you just allow it to happen again and again and again. When you compound many days of doing that, and you go over on the calories or under on the expenditure, it racks up, and then you lose in momentum, and then you end up fucking, the deficit, the shred. Why did it happen? Well, I got 5 hours of sleep last night because I was working so late, and when I wake up and I'm tired, I already have that. I already have reduced willpower. That's a common trend for all humans, really, but I know it's a trend for me. If I don't get enough sleep, I am so much more susceptible to eating something I shouldn't be eating that isn't part of my meal plan or my macros, right? Doesn't fit my macros. It's some processed bullshit. Or I doom scroll, or I pick up any other bad habit or vices because I've had the lack of sleep. So in that moment of reflection, okay, sleep must be prioritized. That's not going to permanently solve it forever, but now you've made a connection in your mind like, fuck, okay, when I have a bad night's sleep, I'm more susceptible to fucking up. That's not the only one. It's not just sleep. It's going to be loads of other things as well, other temptations. You have to be aware of all of this, right? You have to raise your standard and stop allowing yourself to be average. Stop allowing yourself to be mediocre and get mediocre results, and then be annoyed that you've got mediocre results. It's all in you. It's all about the man that's actually following the strategy, right? So for you to go and lose that last little bit of lower belly fat, are there ways that you can optimize the deficit? Of course there are. And I'm going to jump into that in a second, just very, very briefly. But you need to understand it's all irrelevant if you're not going to hold yourself accountable to tracking the necessary metrics and then actually assessing it and looking at it and then holding yourself to the standard required when you realize the gap. That's the whole game summed up. Here's what you need to do. That's step one. Step two is following it. Step three is looking at, did I follow it properly? That's it. Repeat every single day. If it went well, if you did everything perfectly, why did that happen? Well, I got 8 hours sleep. My gym bag was packed the night before. My meals were prepped. Oh, well, when I do that, it's all fucking easy and I don't miss. Cementing it in your brain then again, like, okay, that's what I need to do. That's my standard. When I do that, I'm on point. I don't miss. What the fuck was going on there? So yeah, I need you to really grasp that, guys, first of all, right? It's a more of a mindset thing than it is anything else, and I promise you that. If you wanted it enough, you would have already been tracking all that data. If you were dedicated, go on, love. If you were fully dedicated to getting shredded, you wouldn't have allowed this to even happen. So it's much more of a mindset and standards issue. Now, when we look at the deficit itself, the common things that people get wrong is inaccurate tracking with food. This is why I preach meal plans. If you're gonna do if it fits your macros and you're gonna try and eat something fancy every single day, you're adding in room for error. Now, not only does it take longer, not only do you have to decide, not only does the weekly shopping become harder to figure out because you've got to get all these different protein sources and carb sources and you don't know what you're going to have every day, then you've got to scan your little barcodes and shit, which you can do as long as you do it. But most people can't do it. Most people don't stick to it. And then they're having these little snacks, or they're putting sauce on, they don't track the sauce, they don't track the olive oil. So there's too much room for human error, in my opinion. And this is what I say to clients. I basically give them a macro plan, create a meal plan with them, and then say, look, if you want to go and eat something else, just make it fit your macros, and that's fine, but I wouldn't do it every single day, because it just becomes this thing where you're losing compliance and adherence. And when you do that, you no longer have the results. You're no longer on the path. Other things is length of time. I'm a big advocate of an aggressive deficit, because if we look at like an annual time frame, right? How much progress can we make in a year? If you're truly serious about making as much progress as you can, that basically means building muscle. Yes, losing body fat as well, but you want to build muscle in that time. So we want to spend as much of the year in a phase where food's being pushed up rather than being brought down. So if you go super conservative with the deficit and you don't really push it and you're just doing these like tiny little drops of food or expenditure, then you stretch out, you're in it for fucking 20 weeks. You're in it for like 6 months. What's the point? You're trying to lose all this weight and then you just run yourself into the ground because you've been in a depleted state for all that time. So I'm not an advocate of that. I like an incredibly high expenditure, especially leveraging lower fatiguing forms of expenditure like steps, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I'm a huge advocate of that. At the minute I do about 17,000 steps today, guys. I'm going to prove it to you right now, and it's 1:38 p.m. 16,000 steps, and I just want to prove the times here. 13:38. It's just such an easy way to get shredded. You can do a shitload of cardio. You can start increasing your mileage and doing HIIT sessions and doing all sorts. But you will run yourself into the ground if you're doing high impact forms of cardio. So I much prefer leveraging movement first with a little bit of nutrition, using the food being at its highest point, i.e. the start of the deficit, to push expenditure even further while we can, while food's a little bit higher, still being in a deficit. And then when we hit those sticking points where weight stops dropping, then we do these bigger drops in food. And because you're already expending so much energy, it just fucking every week, it's like kilo. And you just hit this flow state. And then another thing that tags on to that point is predicting the next change. Rather than you waiting for it to plateau out and then dropping your food, if you can see it just starting, rather than doing this, to like just slowly level off, make a change at that point, because it has a bigger impact on the body, and it creates that big gap and bridge that the body has to make up, which keeps the fat loss just fucking ticking over and over and over. And then you're in and out of the fat loss phase as fast as you possibly can. And that is truly it, guys. You know, that last little bit of lower belly fat, I am telling you right now, in all of the people that I have coached in my own journey, in my 5 years of coaching, in my 10 years of training, it is a mindset problem rather than it's an actual tangible, like, oh, what do I need to do? I can't lose the last little bits of body fat. What cardio do I need to do? The answer rarely is in the actual mechanism. Are there ways that you can optimize that? 1,000,000%. There's more than I've shared there. They're just the obvious ones that crop into my mind, but it's a dedication, commitment issue, and that is where you will find, you know, just taking everything up a different gear and a different level, and it has an impact over all areas of life as well, guys. This is what you got to understand. This is why I preach the message I preach. This is why I talk about mindset so much in all these videos, because when you lead with the body in life and you make that the priority, and you wake up and you're focusing those first few hours of the day around getting the body into the position it needs to be in, whatever your goal is, and you lead your life with that, your standards elevated throughout every single other area of life. You turn up to work better, you show up in the relationship better, you provide better, and it's almost instant. When you go all in on the physique, you realize that you're now going all in immediately with everything else. And that happened in my first couple of years of business, where my physique was stuck at that like 15-14% mark. I wasn't really making much money as a personal trainer. I was doing it like in a gym at that time. I didn't have any online clients. I hadn't launched that at this point. But I wasn't making more than like $3,000 a month. Nothing more than that, and it was just stuck. And I was like, new content strategy, new mentor, new education. I thought it was all of these like things, just like with the deficit, where it's like, what forms of cardio do I need to be doing? That's where people's minds kind of go, right? What's the best fat burning supplements and all this shit? But it was never that. It was me deciding, and I didn't realize this. This is how I learned, you know, my kind of philosophy and what I'm teaching now. I said, I'm fed up of not being in the best shape in this gym out of the personal trainers. And I made a vow that I was going to be the most shredded guy, just to prove that I could do it. And when I did that, just like that, I started I think I doubled my revenue in a month, just because every time I showed up on camera, every person I spoke to in the gym, every time I was delivering a session, there was other potential clients watching. I just had this different energy about me. And it just creates this 360-degree momentum. And that's why I preach what I preach, guys. And that's pretty much it. I don't really think I've got much else to share on that, guys. Remember, much more of a mindset issue than it is anything else, and you will find so much value in all other areas of life by dialing in on the mindset as well as the mechanism. The strategy of fitness, but the strategy of the man behind it, right? Having some kind of reflection process, looking at the data, and then holding yourself accountable to that change as well. Appreciate you watching, guys. Just turned up to Coffee Boy in Huddersfield if anybody is from around here, just gonna do some more updates to some internal videos for clients. I'm excited for that. Have a blessed one, guys, and stop settling for fucking mediocre results. Go get shredded.